Hello, Facebook group. How are we doing tonight? I am Andy Panko, one of the moderators of this delicious taxes retirement group, and tonight is a mailbag edition of Taxes and Retirement Live. This is the first week, the first month of this new taxes and retirement schedule, which is actually a lack of a schedule. It's just simply kind of doing these videos, most likely still on Wednesday evenings, as the topics and the content and the demand and my time and whatever else seems to warrant it. So anyway, so I do have a few questions sent this evening already. I have 3 so far and a couple other from another group I'm in that I can touch on if no one else has anything to chime in. As always, David Foltz, bonjour, friends, followed by Mark Troutman. Mark's usually quick to the draw as well with saying hi or hey all in tonight's case. Teresa Wood showing up too. Thank you, Teresa. Hola as well. Although save the hola for tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo. Today's Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Okay. Let me get this off the screen here. All right, so before we get into it, I will give you the dad jokes, including one special edition Star Wars one. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but today is May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you. So for those of you who are into Star Wars, you might appreciate this. I'll close with that one, I guess. All right, so here we go. If your wife says she'll be ready in 5 minutes, she will be. No need to remind her every 15 minutes about it, right? Am I right, though? Anyone? Am I right? I received a text from my wife saying she was breaking up with me. Imagine how relieved I was when a couple minutes later she texted, "Sorry, wrong number." Think about that one for a minute. Go ahead, think about it. Did it hit you yet? It took me a while to realize that. I was like, okay, I get it now. I get it. Yeah. And finally, what did Yoda say when he saw himself in 4K? Yoda said, HDMI. Because Yoda, flips stuff up, like instead of saying I am HDMI, whatever. Yeah, got it. So that's the dad jokes. What am I looking for? Oh yeah, the disclaimer. As always, this video is only general explanations and education. It is not specific tax, legal, investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see in this video, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment or bad dad joke advisor, which I'm not. I'm just some guy on Facebook answering questions tonight, hoping to hopefully get them right. All right, so if anyone does have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments to this post you're looking at now. Again, I do have a few preloaded, but otherwise, don't hold back from dumping them in there. So first 2 from none other than Monsieur David Foltz. When Aunt Irma is ringing the doorbell, at what income levels does it become concerning to you as a financial planner? So just to recap, for those of y'all unfamiliar with IRMA, it is an acronym IRMAA that stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, or amounts, plural maybe, I don't remember. It is the income-based premium surcharges that may be tacked onto your Medicare base premiums when you're on Medicare. It looks at the amount of income you had 2 years prior. It's a whole separate topic why it's 2 years prior, but just know that if your income's over a certain level, you will have surcharges, additional monthly premium amounts you have to pay for your Medicare. Currently, for what it's worth, in 2022, your base Part B premiums, based on your 2020 income, will be if you're single and have more than $91,000 of gross income, you'll start to have some IRMA surcharges. If you're married, file a joint return, you have more than $182,000 of gross income. Again, these are as of 2020 income levels. You'll start to have IRMA surcharges. There's a few different bands. The lowest band that I just mentioned, 91,000 or 182,000 if you're single or married, respectively, is roughly $70 a month extra for Part B, and $12.40 a month, $12.40 extra a month for Part D if you have a Part D drug plan. And it goes all the way up if you're single and have over $500,000 of gross income, or married filing joint and have over $750,000 of gross income. Then the Part B surcharge is like $400 a month per person. So if you're married, it's $400 per person extra per month. And Part D, the drug plan, is an extra, I'll round up, call it $78 a month. So Dave Holt's question is, at what level of income does this IRMA start to concern me? And great question, but like everything, it really all depends. It's situational based on each person's income, largely how much tax deferred assets they have. So common potential issue is people have a few $1,000,000 of tax deferred monies in IRAs, 401ks, whatever, from just socking money away their whole career in a tax deferred vehicle like a 401k or something. You hit retirement, you now have quite possibly a few $1,000,000 of tax deferred money. At some point, you need to take that out. When you look at your IRA or your 401k balance and it's all pre-tax money, you see it as an asset. Like if it's $1,000,000 account, you'd be like, wow, I have $1,000,000. You don't really have $1,000,000. You have a partnership with the government where some portion of that is going to be paid in taxes, because IRAs and 401ks and any other tax-deferred vehicle isn't really an asset. It's just not yet taxed income. Think about it that way. And that's how the IRS views it, because that's what it is. It was income that you deferred the tax upon when you first earned it. You're just kicking the tax can down the road. So for people that have large tax deferred accounts, then the balancing act is, okay, how quickly do we get ahead of it in your 60s typically? Do we start taking large distributions now to trim down the amount of that tax deferred you're eventually going to have to realize? Do we do Roth conversions? If you have a multi-million-dollars of tax deferred accounts, you're almost certainly not going to be able to avoid IRMA at some point, if not now, later. Or if you are going to be subject to it later, you can at least try to minimize later by giving yourself some more IRMA now. So I don't have a great answer, Dave Foltz. My gut reaction, my initial reaction is, don't let that first band of IRMA stop you. What did I say? Roughly $70 a month extra for Part B, roughly it was $1,240, I think, extra month for Part D. So it's $95 a month extra. Not cheap, but that's what, $1,100 roughly for the year extra in premiums. Probably not going to make or break most people, especially, again, that means your income's over 90 grand if you're single, 182 if you're married. You can probably afford that. Not that it doesn't sting, but you can probably afford it. It's when you get up in those third, fourth band where you're paying a few $100s extra a month, then it's like, let's try to avoid that if possible. Now, if you have $5 million in IRA money that you're going to have to start taking distributions on when you're 72 under current legislation, then you probably don't want to avoid IRMA now. You probably want to pull out some of your IRA money now, pay tax on it now, instead of just letting it snowball and all be taxed later. So you're kind of forcibly giving yourself some IRMA now for the hoped benefit of saving taxes eventually down the road. So hopefully that made sense. It was kind of a choppy answer, but that's the thought process running in my head. Really have to look at everyone's circumstances and see how much of a potential future tax issue do you have. The larger it is, the more we want to get ahead of it. And that means, yeah, we may have to give you some IRMA now by kind of propping up your income from, not propping up, but inflating your income by consciously doing IRA distributions or conversions now or something that may put you into IRMA territory. All right. Second question is, would you summarize your conclusions on your recent publication on Roth conversions? Thank you. So I shared it in the group. I think it was a few weeks ago. There's an article I wrote in online financial advisor focused publication called Rethinking 65. And it was just my thoughts. And it's what I think about when I answer questions all the time in this group and with clients about Roth conversions. How much should I do, when, and what's the right number? There aren't finite answers to those things. So after having the same thoughts over and over and finally putting them on paper by way of this article, I just basically hashed out that trying to quantify the value of conversions or exactly how much to do is kind of futile. You can have broad-based targets. You know, if you only have, pick a number, 200,000 of tax deferred monies, you don't have a future tax problem, at least not from that account. So you really don't need to aggressively get ahead of that and convert it. If you got $3 or $4 million, you should probably consider trying to get ahead of that, perhaps by doing conversions. How much to convert, what's your ultimate goal of how much Roth money you want and tax deferred money you want, there's no way to answer that, because all these things are dependent on a handful of variables, very important variables that are impossible to predict. The future returns of the stock and bond market are going to, because depending on how your accounts are invested, that'll impact how much benefit there is or isn't to conversions. Tax legislation itself, that's a wild card. I mean, potentially every 2 years, there's going to be changes in political power in Washington. So that can all sway how and when tax legislation changes. Inflation to some extent, your own mortality, when you're going to pass, all else equal, the longer you live, the more benefit you can, in theory, reap from doing Roth conversions. Or if you have legacy goals, you want to leave Roth, tax-free Roth money to your heirs, then doing more conversions may be the right answer for you versus someone else. They don't have that concern. They'll just leave their heirs whatever, whether it's taxable or not, they don't care. So that's all the stuff that goes into it. I completely understand people wanting to, especially the numerical minded folks, wanting some formal analysis that shows projections and graphs and just tell me what to do. Tell me what the right number of conversions is. It's not that easy. Now, year to year, bigger picture, figuring out how much to convert, how much target you want in each account type, that's the broader, softer, massagey thing where there's not a finite answer to. Once you sort of pick a general strategy, then determining how much to convert each year is a little more tangible and easy to answer. So what are you going to solve for that year? If you're solving for, okay, let's hit ourselves the top of the IRMA bracket, which if you're single is 114 grand, if you're married is 228 grand, then that's what we're backing into. So if you have $20,000 of dividend income, you have another $5,000 of interest income, you have a part-time job, there's another 20 grand. So you already have, I forget the numbers I use, but 55,000 bucks or whatever. So then you still have, another, depending what you're backing into again, another 60 grand or, 170 grand of additional income you can give yourself by way of Roth conversions. So for that year, you can kind of back into how much to convert. But again, bigger picture, it's really hard, this sort of nebulous analysis to figure out what's the right amount of conversions to do or Roth money to have. If someone didn't already, I'll share a link to that article after this, just so you all can see and kind of get inside my head, the crazy stuff that goes on in there with regards to Roth conversions and the different factors that come into play and why it's so hard to come up with a right number for what's the best amount or timing to convert. All right, thank you, Mr. Fultz. One other question, I didn't print it out, but it was posted as a comment to my earlier reminder about this live from Canon. And the gist of the question was, is there an analysis or right number of how much home equity you should have in your personal residence in your bigger financial picture? And there's really not. So, some people are super house rich and other asset poor, other people vice versa. Some people rent and don't have any home equity. Doesn't mean your financial profile is better or worse than anyone else. And for those that do own a home, I don't know that there's a right amount. My view is that your primary residence isn't an investment. Yes, whatever equity you have, awesome, obviously, can be used in retirement, like through a reverse mortgage or like through downsizing to a smaller house to unlock and monetize some of that equity. But I don't know that there's like a concerningly high amount or a concerningly low amount, either in absolute terms or relative to your other assets, because your house is what it is. Some people live in areas of the country where simply houses aren't as expensive as elsewhere. I just had a call with a client today in California, bought a house 30 years ago for 250 grand. It's now worth 1.6 million, right? You're not going to have those kind of numbers in absolute terms in middle America. Not to say there's not pockets, but for the most part, right, simply home values don't go up that much. Now, granted, you wouldn't have paid that much in the first place, but still. So I don't know. It really all depends. I don't think there's a right or wrong number. If you happen to have a house that's highly appreciated, good for you. I don't think that means you need to trim it down or reduce exposure. For what it's worth, the value of your home, it probably is really well or really uncorrelated to the rest of your financial assets. Not to say it doesn't have its own unique risks. I mean, if I don't know, if a pipeline or train tracks are laid right behind your house, that's going to probably destroy the value of your property. And if you had a lot of equity in it, that's not good. But that doesn't mean you should intentionally get out of the house, because the house isn't an investment first and foremost. Its primary objective is the function of providing a place to live that's close to family, friends, school, whatever your reason is for picking that location, it is what it is. So kind of rambling now, but I've never really thought about it, Ken, and I don't know that there is a right or wrong proportion of home equity relative to other assets, or right or wrong absolute amount of home equity. Generally speaking, having a lot of home equity is locked up. I don't want to say inefficient use of your capital, but if you're constrained in your financial assets and have $2 million of home equity, you probably should tap it and use it. Like don't scrap and live like a pauper because you don't have enough financial assets. Then in that case, you're probably too house rich. I mean, maybe you should consider downsizing, or if you're 62 or older, maybe unlock that equity through a reverse mortgage or downsize or whatever it may be. So in that case, sure. But otherwise, I don't know. If you're still working, have great cash flow, I don't know that it's a problem to be kind of house rich and other asset poor necessarily. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Oh, and I see Dave Fold shared the link to the Rethinking 65 article. Thank you very much. So thank you, Cannon, for that question. Hopefully that kind of musing was enough of an answer, or ruminations, I suppose it is. Okay, next question. Facebook user. If you put all your assets in transfer on death accounts except a car, how does a personal representative get money for final expenses when you pass away? That's a good one. I don't know. So TOD, or transfer on death, for those who don't know, is if you have non-qualified accounts. So qualified accounts are Roth IRAs, 401ks, or contractual assets like life insurance. When you die, those things all pass to beneficiaries by way of whatever beneficiary you designate on the forms for each of those accounts. Those don't transfer through your will, they transfer through the beneficiary designation forms. Other financial accounts, regular bank accounts, regular brokerage accounts, do transfer by way of your will unless you name a beneficiary on them through what's called a POD or TOD, payable on death or transfer on death. That basically says, when I die, this account transfers to, John Doe, Jane Smith, whatever. So the question is, if you do die and all of your liquid financial assets are immediately transferred to the ultimate beneficiaries, there's nothing left to pay the final expenses out of the estate. I don't know why I never thought of this. I don't know. My guess is you have to kind of claw it back from the beneficiaries, or the beneficiaries need to kick the money in. Maybe someone who's actually administered an estate may know and is able to chime in. Maybe like the probate judge simply won't let that happen, won't let you close the estate unless someone kicks money in to pay these things out, possibly. That's a great question. I really don't know. Or force the car to be sold, but if that doesn't cover expenses, then I'm not sure how you cover the shortfall. Good one. Yeah, if anyone knows, definitely chime in, please. Next question. Will it be a good idea to hold off opening a single premium immediate annuity or multi-year guaranteed annuity while waiting for the insurers to raise their interest rates? Thanks a lot. No, for the simple answer, never try to time what's going to happen with the interest rate markets. Trying to time that is like trying to time what's going to happen with the stock markets. Now, in theory, you would think that insurers should be, and banks for that matter, should be raising the rates they pay to people, as the short-term Federal Reserve rate was increased 1/4% and now another 0.5% today. And it's forecasted to be increased another few, potentially a couple percent over the next year or two, I think, in tinier chunks, typically 1/4%, maybe 0.5% each time. Those rates don't necessarily directly and immediately translate to higher interest paid by insurance companies. The rate that insurance companies, how should I say this? Interest rates are an interesting thing. When you hear the Fed's raising interest rates, the only thing the Fed is raising is what's called the federal funds rate. That rate is a rate at which banks that are members of the Federal Reserve lend money to one another overnight, on an overnight basis. They don't directly impact any of us. We don't borrow anything at the Fed funds rate. Some of the things we do borrow may be based on Fed funds plus some spread. But the Fed funds rate is an ultra short-term rate that only applies to banks and the Federal Reserve that lend money to one another. That's not the interest rate that directly impacts how much insurance companies make, and therefore what they pay out on their products. That's more driven by the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond yield, which is currently 3%. That's gone up from sub 1% at the peak of the trough of the pandemic, I guess. And that's rocketed up hard in the last few months, which is why bond funds have gotten spanked lately, because most bond funds, especially broad market bond funds, like total bond market funds, they're most impacted by the 10-year Treasury yield, not by the short-term federal funds rate. So it's a 10-year Treasury yield that's been hurting bond funds, as that's spiked up in the last few months. So 10-year Treasury yield is where I'm going with this. That's the rate that's the most impactful to what insurance companies earn and what they pay out. With the fact that the 10-year Treasury rate's gone up, insurers should start to be passing that through in some way, shape, or form. It's not immediate though, because they need time for their investments to kind of cycle through. Stuff they bought at lower interest years ago needs to sort of fall off, and they replace it with this higher yielding stuff. So it might be a while. But my point is, I wouldn't bank on, like, if you know you want or need an annuity of some sort, holding off to hope or think interest rates will go up could be a dangerous game to play. Lots of other macroeconomic things could happen. Worst case scenario, a nuclear war starts and none of this really matters. Interest rates are going to tank at that point because economies are going to collapse and interest rates are going to come crashing down, and boom, there goes your strategy of waiting for annuity rates to get higher. They're probably going to come even worse from that point forward. That's an extreme example, but point is things can happen. Maybe recession's right around the corner, and same thing. At that point, I would suspect rates stop going up and they're going to plateau, if not start to trickle back down. So I wouldn't. That's just my opinion. Again, do whatever you feel is right or best for you. But if you want or need income and you know you want it now and you want to lock it in now, it may be best just to do it, as opposed to wait and speculate on the future direction of where interest paid on these things might go. That's my thoughts there. Good question. Lydia, is there a better time to deliver the I-bond gift? Should I transfer it at the beginning of May or November or at the start of the year, like January 1? Thanks, Andy. No. So with I-bond gifting, the angle here is with I-bonds, you can only buy 10,000 per person per year. I'm excluding trust and corporation, trust and businesses for now, but 10,000 per person per year plus the 5,000 in tax return. Let's throw that out. Let's keep it simple. So let's say you're married, you and your spouse each buy 10,000 of your own. You can't buy any more for yourself this year. You can buy a gift for each other. You can't deliver that gift to each other in this year because gifts take up your annual allocation of 10 grand. But you can nonetheless buy the bond now as a gift, don't yet deliver it, and that gift sits in limbo in something called a gift box within your Treasury Direct account. It starts earning interest now when you buy it, and the 12-month clock on the inability to redeem it starts when you buy it as well. But the interest just kind of sits there and accumulates in this gift box. It's only when you deliver it does the recipient then actually own it. So point is, if you already bought your 10 grand this year, as did your spouse, and you each bought a gift for each other, you can't deliver that gift yet. You can deliver it at some point in 2023. As far as when in the year you deliver it, it doesn't matter, because I don't think it matters, because that bond is already starting to accrue its interest from the day you bought it. So whether you deliver it in January, in May, November, it's not going to matter, because it's still taking up that year's allocation just the same, and it's still already accruing interest just the same. So unless I'm missing something, and I'm not an expert in this gifting strategy, I just found out about it not too long ago, so I don't want to stamp my name on it as seal of approval. Everyone go do this. That's my understanding of how the gifting would work. So I don't think it matters when in the year you actually deliver it, Lydia. Good question. Next, what factors to consider if you name your child as survivor beneficiary for a pension? Wow, that's broad. I don't know, man. I guess it depends. Is it going to be a lump sum? Is it going to be payments, monthly payments that the child is now going to be receiving for the rest of his or her life in your absence? Either way, though, I guess the analysis would be just like leaving any money to a child, especially, I assume this is taxable money, they'll have to pay tax on it. The consideration would be, are they in a really high tax bracket, or will they be? If that's the case, it may not be ideal to leave them this. If you have no one else to leave it to, then fine, don't let the tax thing stop you. But if there's a way you can leave them other assets, perhaps, and maybe leave this fully taxable asset to someone else, that's one consideration, but that might be more work than it's worth. There's also the issue of, is there any reason why you have reservation about the child getting all of the money? Is he or she a spendthrift? Are they going to blow through it? And a pension, I guess, especially if it's monthly payments, that kind of limits them from spending too much, because they're only going to get a certain amount every month. But if it's a lump sum, this is more of a concern. Are you concerned they're going to blow it on wasteful garbage, on addiction issues, on are they potentially going to go through a sloppy divorce, and you don't want the soon-to-be ex-spouse getting his or her hands on it? In all these cases, you may not want to leave the money unencumbered to the child. that if you do want to protect and control the money and who can get at it, that's when you want to need a trust, because a trust can restrict who gets it, when, under what conditions. A trust can keep it out of reach of the beneficiaries, creditors, spouses, their own demons, be it addiction issues or gambling or substance abuse or whatever it may be. So those are the main things to consider. But I guess we'll have to know more about your particular pension to know if there's any other unique angles there. But generally speaking, what I just mentioned are things to consider when leaving anyone money, particularly children, especially if they're a young child. Then it's a different issue. If they're under 18, you have to have a custodian for it and a whole other angle. But let's assume in your case that the child is at least over 18, or at least an adult. Okay, cool. Would it be illegal to sell my $1 million home to my son for $500,000? Illegal? No. But what you're doing is making a gift of $500,000 to your son is what would happen. So anytime you sell anything for less than its fair market value to someone and you're getting nothing in return, you're giving them a gift. So in your example, your home is worth $1 million. If you were to sell it for less than $1 million, it's deemed that the difference is you giving the person a gift. Now it's a little fuzzy. If your home's worth $1 million and you're rushed to sell, so you only sell it for $980,000, no one's going to say boo about the $20,000 gift. It doesn't matter. But if you clearly sell it for substantially less, especially to a family member, you're going to have to treat that as a gift. So what does that mean? Not the end of the world. It just means that you gave a gift of $500,000 to your son. You need to report that on a gift tax return, Form 709. Unless you've already given away more than $12 million in your lifetime, you don't pay tax on that. Your son, the recipient of a gift, never pays tax on receiving the gift. Depending on what they do with the money, they may, but the gift itself is not taxable to the recipient. So no, not illegal at all, but you will have to do a gift tax return to record to the IRS that you gave a $500,000 gift to your son. Okay. Mark Troutman has a payable on death beneficiary for his financial accounts, but the beneficiary, his daughter, is also the executor. So yeah, I guess in that case, she would just take out of her money to pay. But in theory, if the executor is someone who's not one of the beneficiaries, I frankly don't know what would happen. Yeah. Okay. Mark, in response to the single premium immediate annuity and multi-year guaranteed annuity thing, you can consider laddering. So laddering just simply means, for everyone watching, instead of buying one 5-year contract, you buy 5 different 1-year contracts. You do one, then one, then one, or you can do one that matures in a year, one that matures in 2 years, one that matures in 3 years, whatever, stagger it up a little bit. So if rates do rise, for example, in the future, then the 1-year money you did now, when that matures, you'll have that money in 1 year to reinvest, hopefully at the higher rates. Or if rates go down, sort of same thing, you're kind of hedging yourself. You already will have locked in some now by having some 4 and 5 year things that you bought instead of buying everything just for 1 year maturities. But yeah, that's a possibility. Ooh, David Fultz. What have been the biggest financial regrets expressed by your clients? Man, that's a good one. There's not really a common denominator yet. I'm not gonna say that. So I haven't gotten, since my practice is relatively new, I haven't gotten to the point where lots of clients have sort of passed en masse. From what I understand, a lot of people's regrets are, having not enjoyed the money more while I was younger, healthier, and sort of frail 95-year-old with $3 million left. Man, I wish I would have took more trips when I was younger. Now it's easy to say in hindsight, right? When you're looking back, of course, how the past played out. But when you're 60, 65, just enter retirement, you have 30, maybe more years to go. You don't know how long you're going to live, what your health situation is going to be, what the markets are going to do, how much income you're going to have, et cetera. It's not so easy then to say, yeah, let me go ahead and spend a lot now while I'm young, healthy, and vibrant, knowing that it could and should taper off as my mind and body slow down. But that's commonly when I hear across the industry is, man, I wish I would have enjoyed this money more and did more things with it, or whatever, when I was younger and more capable and better health. My case, a lot of people wish they would have saved more. I think for a lot of people, enough is never really enough, right? No one ever knows. Like you ask someone with $1 million, how much you need to be comfortable, and they may say 5 million. You ask someone with $50,000, how much you need to be comfortable, they'll say 500,000. So it's really all relative, how much is enough. But I think a lot of people wish they would have saved more. But again, I don't know there's ever a single number where like, yeah, I'm good. I know I made it and I'm fine. Unless you spend like 20 grand a year and got 10 million bucks. I mean, that's a pretty easy story. I don't know. I'm stumped. I'm trying to think. I don't have recurring common regrets. One thing, and part of this is sort of the media and groups like Taxes and Retirement's fault. But it's largely, at least based in something sound, having a lot of tax deferred assets. Not that it's a massive regret, but people like, man, I wish now looking back, I would have put more into Roth money if it was possible. Some people wasn't possible, or in regular brokerage accounts, as opposed to taking a bite of the dangling carrot of tax deferral. Good problem to have. I don't think people really complain about it, but in theory, it'd be nice. People do wish they had less of their money in fully taxable accounts like IRAs and 401ks. That's probably the most common denominator. But that may also be self-selecting because of who I am, what I say, and what I do in this Facebook group. Everyone's acutely aware of taxes, so they're more attuned to it than probably average folks are. So that may be why people I work with, that's one of their sort of common things they say, because it's top of mind for them. But great question. Facebook user: a family member is 55 but still living on Social Security disability. Do they still have to pull out of their 401k IRA when they get to 67, or whenever retirement time is for them to withdraw? I know they can pull it out now, 10% penalty, but they don't want to use it until absolutely necessary. I think they still have to take an RMD at one point. So few moving pieces here. SSDI, Social Security disability. If and when you're on disability, what happens is at your, I think it's full retirement age, not 62, full retirement age, your disability automatically just flips over to being normal Social Security, normal retirement benefit. It's all fairly seamless. Whatever you're getting in disability continues on, in most, if not all cases, as your normal Social Security benefit. So there's nothing really magical or special about SSDI. It eventually becomes normal Social Security. So that's one thing that I think is separate and distinct from whatever else you're asking about having to take money out of 401ks, IRAs. Those, regardless of disability status, yes, tax deferred monies you need to start taking out under current legislation the year you turn 72, and then every year thereafter. You don't have to take out before. You can if you want. No one's going to stop you. But you have to start taking out at least a certain amount starting the year you turn 72. I think that's the question. It's really two questions in one. It's unrelated to Social Security and SSDI. Quick other fact, though, you mentioned the 10% penalty. If you're under 59 and a half, when you take money out of tax deferred accounts, generally there's a 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of having to pay tax. If you are completely and totally disabled, you can access your tax deferred money at any age without the 10% penalty. You still have to pay tax, but you can forego the 10% penalty. Now, the definition of completely and totally disabled is quite extreme. So a lot of people are on Social Security disability that I don't think meet the definition of completely and totally disabled that would qualify them for this 10% penalty waiver. But it might be worth looking into if this applies to you or someone in your family. If you do want and need additional money above and beyond your disability from Social Security, maybe you can get penalty-free access to your 401k even at age 55 under that 10%, under that disability 10% penalty waiver. But you have to, I don't even know who you ask for that, like how to validate whether or not you're completely and totally disabled by IRS standards to get that penalty waived. Good question. Yeah, Ken. And so actually, I answered this 10 minutes ago or so. Just to recap quickly, what portion of your net worth should be in your residential home. As I said, I don't think there is a right amount, or it kind of is what it is. You don't buy a house as a primary residence. You shouldn't buy as an investment. You buy it for the function of a place to live nearby your work or your family or your friends or whatever it may be. and the value is going to be what it's going to be. I mean, don't buy more house than you can afford, obviously, but if and when you get to retirement, whether a lot of your net worth is your home equity or a small portion, I don't know that it's a problem. The question is more, how can your combination of assets, be it home equity in primary residence, financial assets, sources of guaranteed income, Social Security, pensions, annuities, how do those things all come together to give you the income in the retirement that you want or need? If your financial assets, if your other sources of income aren't sufficient for the life, the money you need, then you may need to consider monetizing home equity. If you have a lot of home equity, then yes, then maybe you have too much and should unlock it and use it. If you don't have a lot of home equity, then it is what it is. You can't really do much about that at that point. So good question, but and one I haven't thought about before until your question. I saw your question the other day. There isn't really a right answer. I think it's largely situational. Kind of whatever your home equity is, it is. There's not an issue. There's not a level where I'm like, man, that's concerningly high home equity, right? I'm never going to balk at someone for having a lot of equity in their house unless it impinges on their ability to live the life they want to live because they're house rich and other asset poor. That's a bad scenario. That's when you should consider downsizing or unlocking the equity to use it. But otherwise, it's typically not a problem, whether you have a lot or a little home equity, in my opinion. It's all in the context of the rest of your plan and the rest of your assets and income. Is there other way to transfer or inherit a house that is fully paid aside from revocable living trust to avoid probate? Yes, sort of. So I'm not recommending you do or don't do any of these. You can outright gift it during your lifetime. If you're going to be leaving your house to your kids or whomever, you can just give it to them now. It will be considered a gift, that you have to report to the IRS while you're alive. Probably not going to owe tax on it in most cases, but you can do that. That has its own unique drawbacks. Like now the house isn't yours. What if the kid kicks you out? Hopefully they wouldn't. But what if the person who now owns your house says you're a squatter, kicks you out? That would be bad. Another way, there's something called, depending what state you're in, a ladybird deed in some states, or here in New Jersey, what is it called? A life estate, it's called in New Jersey. This is a little more complicated, but it basically says, okay, while I'm alive and I'm going to continue to live in this house, I'm going to have some sort of ownership interest in it. You, the one I'm granting it to under this life estate deed, you're going to have a remainder interest. And that basically means so long as I'm alive, this is my house to use as I please. If and when I die, then it automatically transfers to you. Now, a little more complicated than that. And again, it depends on your state, whether or not they allow this or what it's called. But that's also a taxable gift, because even though the person you're giving the life estate to now isn't getting full ownership and use of the house, there's value. There's non-zero value in that what's called remainder interest. The interest of after you die, they get kind of what's left of that house, if you will. And at least in New Jersey, there's a formula to determine based on your age. You own the house now. Based on your age, there's a life expectancy formula that figures out, okay, how much of the current value of the house are you in effect keeping, and how much are you now gifting to the life estate deed beneficiary, if that's even the right term. So that's one way to do it. Another way, or have it go through your will, but that doesn't avoid probate. Or a trust, whether it's revocable or irrevocable trust, that would do it as well. Outside of that, I'm not aware of. Not to say there's not other creative, off the beaten path ways I'm not thinking of, but those are typically the main ones. Gift it, life estate deed, aka ladybird deed, or put it in a trust and let it pass by way of the trust. Yeah, even the life estate deed, I don't know that it completely avoids probate. It should. It avoids probate in the sense that you don't have to have the probate court determine who gets it. The life estate will determine who gets it. But the value of your house is still included in your estate. But so is it in a living trust. Never mind. So that doesn't matter. Okay, I forget I said that. So you're in Virginia. Yeah, I don't know particularly in Virginia what it is, but reach out to local estate planning attorneys and just ask them, about a living, what did I just call a life estate or a ladybird deed, I think it's called, and just see what they know what you're talking about, and they should be able to help you from there. Cool. And what else is there? Okay. Where are we? Taxes at full retirement age, 401k withdrawals are taxed as income. How does that income impact the amount of your Social Security that is taxed? Ooh, yeah. So best way to answer this is I've done a few videos on this on my YouTube channel that has descriptions and graphs and charts and formulas that'll answer it. How much Social Security tax is kind of convoluted formula. It's difficult to explain, but the skinny of it is the amount of your Social Security that's included in your taxable income is a function of how much other income you have from wages, 401k distributions, interest, dividends, pensions, capital gains from selling things in a brokerage account. The more of those things you have, the more of your Social Security is going to get sucked into taxation. At the high end, 85% of your Social Security will be fully taxable. The other 15% will not federally. And at the state level, and I think 40 states, 38 states, Social Security is not taxable at the state level. And those other 12 states, it may be taxable depending on certain things. So without knowing actual numbers and basically the rest of your mock tax return to see what your other sources of income, it's not possible to say how much of your Social Security will be taxable. Just know that the larger your 401k withdrawals are, the more of your Social Security will be taxable, up to terminally the point where 85% of your Social Security is pulled into being taxable federally. Good question. Next, I'm over 72, but still making money and have no other retirement plan that give me a retirement amount. The way I understand it is I can still add 7,000 to my traditional IRA. Can't do Roth since my income is over the limit. Is that right and advisable? Okay, so can't say anything about advice. I can't tell you whether you should or shouldn't do it. But yes, if you have any sort of earned income, regardless of age, whether you're 12 or 112, you can still contribute to an IRA. This is something new that was put in place effective 2020 under the Secure Act. And so long as the amount of your earned income is at least $7,000, yes, you can put $7,000 into a traditional IRA. Now, if you don't have any access to a retirement plan at your work, and if you're not married, or if you are married and your spouse similarly doesn't have access to a plan at work, you can take a deduction for your $7,000 IRA contribution, regardless how high your income is. If you do have access to a retirement plan at work, or if you're married and your spouse has access to a plan, then there are income limits that you need to be below in order to deduct your $7,000 contribution. If you can't deduct it, you can still make the contribution. It's just going to be non-deductible, meaning you get no tax break for it now. But yes, long way of saying, regardless of your age, if you still have earned income, yes, you can put money into an IRA. If your income is at least $7,000 of earned income, you can contribute the full $7,000 to an IRA. But again, cannot say whether you should or shouldn't, and what's best for you. Okay. Any other questions? Looks like that's it for now. One other question I got in another group. So I'm a member, one of the sort of coaches / faculty in the group that Roger Whitney created called the Rock Retirement Club. It's a paid membership group, really, really cool group. Lots of community, lots of education, lots of great resources, lots of meetups, virtual and in person, lots of kind of self-paced modules and classes to do. But anyway, tomorrow night, I'm doing an open-ended question thing like this within that group. And one of the questions I got in that group for tomorrow is about 529 plans. Doesn't come up a lot here because it's a college education plan, not really retirement focused thing per se. But someone asked, when you have a 529, it's basically a way to get tax favored treatment of money within this 529 plan. You can take distributions out tax free if those distributions are used to pay or reimburse qualified education expenses, such as college expenses. Now, if the child goes to college and gets full scholarships, such that there is no way to use this money on college because it's fully paid for, well, then you can take out money from the 529 without penalty. You still have to pay tax, but you can take it out without penalty. So anyway, so someone's question was, my kid went to school 10 years ago, had scholarships at the time. Can I take money out from the 529 now, 10 years later, and still get the preferential treatment of just using this as a, taking it out on the grounds that she got scholarships, so now I'm taking the money out penalty free? Unfortunately, no. the distributions from 529s need to happen in the same year as the expense, as the tuition, as the room and board, as the whatever. You can't take it out after the fact. If you do, then it's a non-qualified withdrawal that will be taxed, or at least the earnings will be taxed and penalized. So I thought that was an interesting question. Okay. What is this? Colorado also allows a beneficiary deed, also known as a transfer on death deed on real property. Okay, it's probably functionally a similar thing, it sounds like, as a life estate deed. Okay. Oh, yeah, here you go, Lydia in Virginia. Yes, they do allow life estate. There you have it. Do you enjoy any financial podcasts? That's a great question. I frankly don't listen to any podcasts at this point, or very rare that I do, unless someone tells me, hey, check out this particular episode of this. So I used to soak these things up voraciously. Prior to me starting this business, when I was still in my old world, the corporate finance and investing world, I used to commute to and from my house in central New Jersey into Manhattan every day. And so it was a lot of time spent on a train and a subway and walking. So I would have better part of 2 hours each day of unencumbered time just walking or sitting on a train, where I would listen to a lot of podcasts. That stopped over 2 years ago when I left that world to start this. Now, unless I consciously carve out time from my day to just sit and listen to podcasts, I don't do it. So I basically haven't listened to any podcasts in the last few years, again, shy of a handful of one-off episodes here and there. But what I used to really like when I did was Jim Saulnier's Retirement and IRA show. That's kind of his approach is what I modeled my thing here to give away massive amounts of info, very technical, very in-depth, super valuable, but explained in as plain English of a way as possible. And I was just like, wow, the stuff Jim Saulnier gives away in his podcast, I was like, he should be paying for this. This is better education than the stuff I learned in the CFP program, in the Retirement Income Certified Professional program. His stuff is that good, and it's free. And you can ask him questions and he responds. So anyway, so that's what I modeled sort of my social media presence after was him. So that was my favorite podcast. Retirement and IRA show, and he's still doing it. He does 2 shows a week. It's insane that how he keeps this up. But anyway, the Retirement Answer Man from Roger Whitney was also my weekly rotation. God, I'm drawing a blank. It's been a while. Your Money, Your Wealth. There's a bunch. There's probably even dozens more now that are awesome that I never even come across because I don't put any time in to listen. Now my own retirement planning education. I started that this year, so I'm a little biased in saying that, but I don't even listen to mine. I record it. I let them fly, and that's it. I don't even frankly know what they sound like. Anyway, so I guess I'll leave that there. Those are the ones I like. They're retirement focused. There's more. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry. God, there's like 12 on my rotation. There's some financial advisor specific ones. Michael Kitces has a Financial Advisor Success podcast. That's probably less interesting to most of you all. Jim, if you like this Facebook group, the Jim Saulnier Retirement and IRA show is awesome. My own, obviously, I think is awesome because it's me saying and doing the same shtick as I do on Facebook. I do it just in audio format. So definitely check mine out if you like this kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. I'll stop there, I guess, because I'm drawing a blank on the other ones I used to listen to. Next question. If I'm using money from a 529 to pay for tuition, can I also use Series EE and I bonds tax-free to pay for college expenses? Oh, yeah, great question. Yes and no. So there's a handful of education credits and benefits throughout the tax code. Like 529s, for example, is a tax-advantaged way to save and pay for qualified college expenses. There's also some credits. There's a lifetime learning credit. There's the American Opportunity Tax Credit. There's the ability to deduct student loan interest. There's Series EE and I bonds. If you use the interest to pay for qualified education expenses, it's not taxable. That's another thing, but you can't double dip across these things. So if you have, let's just keep the math simple, you have $10,000 in tuition expenses this year, and you take out $10,000 from your 529 to reimburse yourself for it, you're done. You can't claim any of that $10,000 for as exemptions from I bond or Series EE bond interest. You can't claim that $10,000 for the American Opportunity Tax Credit or Lifetime Learning Credit. You can't double dip, and vice versa. If you use that tuition you paid towards one of those 2 tax credits I mentioned, you can't then also reimburse yourself from 529, or you can't get the free, tax thing from Series I bonds to apply that. So you can only pay for the same dollar of education expense with one of the various tax preferenced things. So to answer your question, no, you can't pay for the same expenses with 529 and with tax-free interest from I bonds or EE bonds. It's only one or the other. All right. And any other questions? Blah, 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 blah. Love this group. Trying to soak it up. Great information. Thank you. Yeah, it's like drinking from a fire hose. This group, Jim Saulnier's podcast, again, the Retirement and IRA shows is my favorite for technical, amazing education that can't believe it's free. It's a lot to soak up. But what happens is when you first start exposing yourself to this tax and retirement stuff and IRA stuff, it's so foreign at first. And as long as you pick up a little tidbit, every time you listen, every time you read something, you'll pick up a little tidbit here and there. That's progress. Eventually, what you'll find is the more you listen and soak the stuff up, you'll hear and see the same things over and over. And then it just gets drilled into your head. And now it's just like, it. One day you wake up and you know it. How you know it is when you see someone else ask a question. You're like, oh, I know that answer. The answer is blah, 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 blah. That's when you know you've got it. So the more you digest all this stuff, whether it's me here, whether it's this podcast, whether it's Jim Saulnier, whether it's any other source of good content out there in the world, it's repetition. The more you hear, see, and do it, it'll just click. One day you wake up and say, "Ooh, wow, like I get this stuff." And that's what happened to me. Now mine was also from formal education, from CFP curriculum and enrolled agent curriculum and things like that. But it was, from a fire hose, just immersed myself in it and learned and learned and learned. And before you know it, it's like, boom, all this stuff is just clicking together. And I'm I can visualize this stuff now. I think in tax planning and I think in IRA rules at this point, which is kind of scary. But that's what happened to you all. The more you soak up all this lovely, delicious content here. Okay. Who has the retirement and IRA podcast? Jim Saulnier, Jim. Last name is Saulnier. Hands down. Yeah, here you go. Jim Saulnier and Chris Stein. Thanks, Mark. Can I use 529 1 year in the bond interest another? Yes, of course. Yep. As long as you're not double dipping. 1 year you pay for all your qualified college expenses of 529 distributions. The next year you pay for all of it with I bond interest, or maybe you only have some, enough I bond interest to pay for some of it. You can pay for the rest of that year's tuition and fees with 529 money if you want. All right. Looks like that might be it. Wish I can get continuing education credit for listening. He should. He seriously should, because I'm not just saying this. The quality and depth of that content really is as good or better than a lot of the actual content I've studied and actual continuing education stuff I do each year. Now it's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of work, but it's work to get approved to do that and to maintain the certification, the accreditation for it. So he's probably not interested, which I don't blame him, but he definitely could with the quality of the stuff he gives out there. All right. Looks like that might be it. Mark Troutman, member of the Rock Retirement Club. Yes. See you tomorrow. We'll do it again. Tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo. I might show up with some Dos Equis tomorrow. I don't know if Roger would frown upon that. It might be a bad look for me. Shouldn't get too sauced while I'm sitting there answering questions, but it's only an hour. How much damage could I do? Anyway. All right. Thank you all. As of now, I don't have any other lives scheduled. This new world of lives is kind of do it as it seems to make sense. So definitely not going to happen next week. I'll be away in Texas next week, perhaps the week after. I don't know. But basically, my thought process is if and when the mood strikes me to do one of these, I'll give you all notice. Worst case, morning of, but hopefully a week or so advance ahead of time. So that's that. Thank you as always for showing up. I appreciate your questions and time and sitting with me for this hour and watching me kind of ramble on about this stuff. But anyway, much appreciated. All right. Thank you all. Take care.